right, I think that is fair to get started. We have a decent crowd here, and let's go through the formalities first. Welcome to the second part of the overview of Horizon Tools workshop. We delivered the first part of this content last Monday. Thank you for those who attended that session. And today we're going to continue discovering and exploring additional tools that Horizon has available for us creators to build our experiences. As always, just showing here on the screen where this information fits according to the skill matrix alignment. We're going to be covering things that belong to the assignment bucket because we're going to be talking about mechanics, core loop, and progression, as well as scripting, of course. We're going to be covering programming and some meta Horizon systems. A little bit of housekeeping here. This session is being recorded. For those that are going to be joining late or cannot attend, they're going to be able to watch this content later. Make sure to mute yourself, but please unmute, whenever you want if you have any questions. Raise your hand, of course, if you want to add some comments or ask any questions. Try to keep those questions short to give others the opportunity to also ask their own questions as well. Share the context. Make sure that you describe the problem and then ask the question before, so we can better understand the scenario. Be active in the chat. As always, if you don't feel comfortable talking in public, you can always drop the question in the chat. I'll do my best reading through the questions and answering when I can. And at the end, this time I will remember sharing the link to the survey. But normally you should receive an email with the survey. Please fill that information because that helps the team know if this content is useful. And if it's not, then we can always pivot to something different. But your feedback is always valuable. This is how we grow, and then we prepare this content. All right, let's dive into it. So let me bring my desktop editor here. I am continuing working on this world. As I mentioned, all of this information is going to be shared to you through the forums. So you get a copy of all the scripts that I'm going to be using here and the ones that I used in the past. So to get started, I'm going to do a presentation of the instance replay. I shared a demo of this last week, but it was like really simple. And it was first person point of view. In this demo that I'm going to show you now is actually third person point of view. And I think it offers a better perspective of the potential of this feature. So for that, I am going to switch to my VR headset because instance replay is only available for VR players. So give me 1 second. I'm going to press switch to VR. Hopefully you can see. Okay, there you go. And then if I go to the entrance here, I'm going to play the world. All right, so I'm going to start this parkour area from this platform, and then I'm going to make it all the way to the end. And then hopefully we're going to see a recording of that happening. So I start right here. I have my obstacle course here, some hazards substance there. And then I go here, boom, jump. Then some type of celebration moment here. And then after a while, I get a notification say, hey, your recording is ready. And then I'm able here to replay my experience. So you can see here, imagine, for example, that you have a grand, a celebration moment in your world, and then you want the player to be able to capture that moment, letting them know, hey, this is you, making it all the way to the end. Go ahead and then share that on social media if you want to. That also gives you an opportunity to promote your world in social media, for example, if the player decides to share this video, and then other visitors are going to be able to know about your experience. So now after that demo is over, let me go ahead and share the code on the screen so you can see how simple that is. Now, let me switch back to desktop editor. So the way how I have this example configured at the moment is, as I mentioned, I have my initial platform here. So I have it that when I enter the trigger, the recording starts, then the player goes and then continues the parkour course, and then after it reaches this other trigger, the recording stops. And that looks like this. There's going to be instant replay. Be something like this. As you can see, it's not really a really long script. It's very short. It has a lot of information because I added a lot of like console logs and comments and spaces. But basically, the key component on this is this part when I start recording the player. So in here, what I did is that I created kind of like a database, or what is called pretty much like a map that allows me to prevent that multiple recordings start at the same time. So this map basically creates a list of players and their corresponding existing recording in progress, right? So when a player enters the first trigger, which is this one down here, this recording starts. So I say start video capture. That's the key component here. Again, everything that I have before that is basically just me being extra careful, just like making sure that the player doesn't start recording twice. But then this is the key component here, start recording. And then when the player enters the second trigger up here, the stop video capture is called. So these two are the two main components. Those are the two APIs. You use those two and then you're good to go. You can rearrange this code however you like. But those are the key APIs that allow that functionality. You can see it's very simple. This one doesn't require importing too many complex stuff. It does require enabling the capturing API. Remember again that the API can be activated in the script menu, then settings, and then API. And then in here, there is the capturing API toggle. Just by doing that and using then the corresponding APIs, then we are able to implement this feature into our worlds. As I mentioned, the caveat of this is that it's only available for VR players. I know that right now there is a push for mobile players. However, since the majority of the visitors that we have right now are VR players, they can turn into great promoters of our worlds, right? Like imagine, for example, like VR players, like using this information, using this experience, capturing video, sharing on social media, that someone that doesn't have a headset is going to watch that video on Instagram, for example. They're going to click the link to the world, and then they're going to be able to access your world on mobile. So it's kind of like a win-win situation there. Any questions about this feature before I move on to the next one? Awesome, great. At any given moment, remember, like if you have any questions from a past feature or something that you remember to ask last minute, just let me know, and then I'll answer it. All right. So the next thing that I want to talk about, this is more a little bit more like theory, pretty much. So frames, and the next topic, which is frame budget boost, which is like the same, frame budget, but this one here. Let me share in the screen documentation. This is kind of like a hidden feature that Horizon has that allows to exponentially increase, or at least increase the performance whenever the world is not reaching the desired 72 frames per second. Whenever you capture the metrics, the performance metrics in your world, and you notice that your world is not, performing accordingly, the first thing that you want to check is, the composition of your matches, the composition of your scripts, if they're being performant enough. But then if you have done anything within your power to increase the performance of your world, this is something that potentially can help you. So this is a toggle that is under the player settings in the desktop editor. You go here into the main menu, and then you go into player settings, and then you can scroll down to frame budget boost. Currently says early access, but it has been released for a really long time. And then you can toggle this on and off. The default configuration of this is just default. And basically what that does is that Horizon is going to try to implement this feature only in certain situations and for certain players. But then if you change it to be always on, then that is going to be implemented for everybody. And the way how that works, again, as I mentioned, is that if your world, for example, if someone is experiencing a frames per second less than 60%, for example, Horizon is going to try to increase, to force the rendering of things in the world based on a frame rate of 72 frames per second. That I cannot, unfortunately, demonstrate because that does require, configuring the scenario with certain conditions, like for example, like lower network latency, for example. My internet is really good at the moment, so I cannot simulate that, or having a world that has like a lot of geometry, right? But just know that that is available there in case you need to explore the possibility of increasing the performance of your world by just using this feature. Something to be aware of, though, is that when this feature is enabled, when this is turned on, players might observe distortions in your world. So use this very carefully. Again, your first approach, whenever you have like a low frame per second FPS, then you want to improve the performance of your meshes, the texture, making sure that you don't have too many complex geo in your world, and also making sure that you don't have like, let's say, like on updates running all the time in the world, because that also affects the performance. If you check all the boxes of best practices and then you're still running, really low on performance, then this could be a good thing to try. But after you toggle that on, make sure that you check and validate that nothing in your world is distorted, because that could be the downside of that it can affect the experience in your world. Also, this is not very good with transparencies. I think, if I remember correctly, this is one of transparencies is one of those scenarios where this feature is not really good at. That is available as well there. All right, so any questions about that feature? Okay, I see the question now about the camera position for the capture. Yes, you can. So last week, when I shared this same feature, I shared the first person point of view. That is the default configuration. So in this part here, using this API, when starting the video capture, the default configuration will be something like this. So if I were to do something like this, it's just literally just calling the API and giving it a name. This name is the name of the moment that is going to appear for the player, right? You can say like, epic jump or epic kill, something like that. That's what this is. And then as an optional parameter, we can then modify how the camera is positioned when capturing the video. By default is first person point of view, just like the VR player would see it. But then you have optional parameters in here where you can specify, you can do that part, the type of camera movement preset. And if I go, for example, to the definition of this one, by the way, if you ever have any questions about the implementation of an API, this is the trick that I always recommend. You can always right-click on the method that you want to explore, and then go to definition, or you can also press Control on the keyboard and then click on the API that you want to explore. As you can see, for example, right now I'm pressing Control of my keyboard, and then it's highlighting, like making everything kind of like a hyperlink that you can click, and then it's going to take you to the documentation. So in this case, I'm going to click on the documentation of a start video capture. When I do that, you're going to see here that you have optional parameters, as the API description shows here. And some of those optional parameters is that you can specify the video capture options. Again, I'm going to click on this one. And the camera, the options that are available, one of them is the camera movement preset. And then if I go on this one as well, here are the different presets that we have. We can specify the first person movement, that's the default. We can specify the third person movement, that's the one that I showed, the one that goes over the shoulder. And then this one is going to be a fixed position. So on this position, then you can specify, a fixed location in the world from where the capture is going to be, from where the POV is going to be positioned. So yeah, you can play with these three configurations to kind of like to change the placement of the camera. See if there's anything else I can mention from here. See if we go to the fixed location here. You can see that this one in particular, the fixed position tracking player camera, has another parameter where you can specify the vector or location from where that capture is going to be, is going to be obtained. So yeah, yep, exactly, a vec3. That's the parameter that you can specify there. Hopefully that answers your questions. Again, this is one of those APIs that have a bunch of ramifications inside of it. It's not as simple, for example, as as console error, right? And then you can just put whatever you want there. In this case, since there are a different configurations that you can implement, you have to kind of to play with the API and find the one that actually works for you. Again, my trick is always pressing Control and then the name of the API that I want to explore, or you can right click on it and then go to definition. It's going to take you to the same thing. Good thing is that Horizon is doing really well at documenting the APIs. So you can get really well information, very good information about the functionalities and parameters that each one of these APIs require. So you can set it at the static position and rotation. It will always track the local player, correct? This is not a local script. That's a very good question. This doesn't require local scripting. This literally runs on the server side. It's going to track whatever player you specify here, which is this one. In this case, I'm using get player because I'm using a map, but I could have just literally just used the player directly. But yeah, this one doesn't require local scripting. And yeah, you kind of like, you cannot use those attributes of rotation and placement like an offset to capture the recording. It's either over the shoulder or a fixed location. Something that you can do with camera though, but it's not a recording, I don't know if this is what you're probably more interested on, is that you can actually attach the camera of the player to anything in the world. Last Monday, I demonstrated, for example, the functionality of this dolly camera here. And what I do with that dolly camera is that when I enter the trigger here, I am attaching my camera, my player camera, to this camcorder here. And then I'm able to navigate the world by just moving this camera around, and then I'm able to explore the world that way. But that doesn't generate an auto recording like the instant replay does. This is just for to create different mechanics, right? In this case, to fly around and then being able to explore the world that way. Okay. I love that you added the camcorder vision for that. Yeah, this is actually, this is actually something that I think that's how Horizon normally captures videos of the worlds. Of course, they have their own super advanced system, but what I wanted to demonstrate here is that we don't have to rely on those like functionalities. We can always create our own and then make it work the same way or similar or obtain similar results. Cool. All right. So let's move on to the next topic. I think this one is going to be super important, especially for those that are going to be participating in the competition with teams or with other creators. So one scenario that happens when you are working with others, or even if you're working on your own, is that you need to find the right balance between the art and scripting. And sometimes that is not in sync. Sometimes sometimes the art team might finish, really fast, or and then the scripting is kind of like delayed for some reason, or vice versa. It might be that the scripting, is moving really fast, and then the art team is still, trying to decide the best way of building something. So the solution for that, to make sure that no one's, that we don't are a roadblock for anybody, is the use of asset templates. And let me quickly demonstrate that here. Let's imagine, for example, I'm a scripter, and I'm going to be working on a weapon script. So I don't have the asset yet. So what I'm going to do as a scripter is that I'm going to just, use a placeholder for now. So in this case, I'm in Blender right now. I'm going to, delete the things that I don't need. As a scripter, I'm going to create the most basic thing that I can make, to make resemble a weapon somehow. So I'm gonna just shrink this a little bit, maybe. Let's see, maybe like about that size should be fine. I'm gonna make it a little bit larger on the y-axis. I'm gonna duplicate that. And then I'm gonna rotate it. Let's see, on the x-axis, maybe 90 degrees. And then shrink it a little bit more. There's gonna be kind of like the handle. And then I'm gonna move it a little bit. So away, let's see. Okay, there you go. And I think that's good for me. I mean, as a scripter, I think that's decent enough. I'm just gonna apply the transformations here, the rotation in this case, and the scale. I think that's very important. And rotation and a scale. So this is my placeholder. Again, I'm just trying to get something going, while I wait for the final art. So I'm gonna go ahead and export this. So I'm gonna say File, Export as an FBX, and I am going to save it on my folder here. I'm gonna create a new blaster. I'm gonna call this one new weapon and export it. So after I have that, I now go back to Horizon. I import my asset. So if I go here, 3D model, I'm gonna import that. 1 second, this one. And this is gonna be my new weapon. I'm gonna bring it over here. Oh, I forgot to delete the material most likely. Let me delete that real quick. So I'm just gonna, not even a material, I'm just removing everything. I just want a gray box that I can use. I'm gonna export that. New weapon. I'm gonna import it. By the way, I don't know if you knew that, but you can actually import things to Horizon without specifying a material. What's gonna happen is that it's just gonna be completely white. And that's gonna be new weapon. Okay, excellent. So it's here. I'm gonna bring it over. All right, here it is, my awesome weapon, my awesome blaster here. So again, as an scripter, I'm just gonna start, while I wait again for the art to be ready, I'm just gonna start working on this. I'm gonna add my projectile gizmo in this case. And I'm gonna place it, I'm just gonna continue working on my thing. Copy the location of this, place it in the, this is another trick, by the way. If you find it hard to position things in the world, one trick is to select the object that is already in the location that you want to use. Then here in the properties panel, you can right click on the position, copy the position, then select the new object, and then right click on here in the properties panels again, and then click paste. That is going to automatically, move that object to that location without you having to adjust that too much. Then I'm going to place it where more or less the object would be, which is basically here somewhere. And then let's imagine, that I just continue working again as a scripter. I create a script, I attach everything. I'm going to group these two things. So I'm going to add a parent object. And then I'm going to call this one Blaster. Okay. So after I do all that, let's imagine that I attach the script, I make it grabbable and all that. So now the asset is done. Instead of me having, let's say, to start all over again when that new asset is ready, all I have to do is literally replace the asset template and then propagate the changes, and then I'm set. Let's see how that looks. So since I never remove the connection of this asset with the asset template, as you can see here, this one is still blue. Now what I can do is that I can select that object from my library, and then I can go here in the properties panel and select replace asset. Now I can go to the location where the final blaster is. I think I have it saved here. Nope, was that one here? I think it's this one. So for example, let's say that I have that one already set. Let me confirm that that's the one that I want to use real quick. Tools. Yeah, that's the one. Okay, cool. So I select my final version. The art theme is done. Then I select it. I accept that. That's what I want to use. I import it, and let's see what happens. It's gonna take like a few seconds here to upload. Right there, it's uploading. And after that is done, if everything is right, okay, now I can go here to my to this option here, which is the one that shows you whenever one of your assets is replaced, you're gonna get a notification here saying, hey, you have new updates available. So when I go here, now it shows me what assets have been changed or modified, and then I can select, which ones I want to update. In this case, I only have one. So if I click update now, is updated, and now boom, there you go. My weapon is already there. I don't have to reconnect any scripts. I don't have to reconnect any elements of that group, because my main asset, the main mesh is still connected to the asset library. So whenever I make changes to that asset, then those changes are going to be propagated into all the places where that object is being used. By the way, props again to Yelixa for creating this awesome asset for me. Yeah, super amazing. Any questions? Let's see. We have, yeah, copy position is super useful. You can do that actually, I think, for with most attributes in here. You can copy the scale as well. You can copy the rotation, the position as I demonstrated. I don't think that you can copy anything else. I think that those are the ones that you can copy and paste. Very useful. Yeah. Oh, I see. That's why you didn't use the building cubes. Yeah, exactly. So this only works if you have a template already here. It doesn't work, for example, if you create an asset template with objects in the world. Like if if I had, let's say, like the cubes as Natasha mentioned, and then I create my weapon this way. If I were to, uh, you know, adjust this and then basically see something like that. If I were to group it, oops, this one. And then if I group it and then I right click on it and then create new assets, demo for now. This also creates an asset template, but it's not, you can see here that even the icon is different. So this one tells you that it's an asset created made of elements in your world, whether this one is an asset template that is created based on things that you imported. So these are the ones that you can bring from external sources and then replace. You can also do the same thing with these assets, by the way. Like if I were to modify this one now, I can also right click on this and then maybe, let's see if I can do that. Yeah, okay. So for example, like if I can also right click on this one on the demo and then click on edit template definitions. And when I go here, I can start making changes to it. Let's say that I want this one to be a different color. And is this working? I don't know if they fixed that color issue. Looks like they didn't. But maybe I can quickly apply a texture. I'm just gonna apply. I don't think I have a texture I can apply to this, but let's see. Yeah, for now. Okay, that's that was improvised there. But yeah, after I do that, I can save it, and then changing textures, and then save and publish. And then if I were to have, let's say, like multiple instances of this asset or of this template, I will be able then to propagate those changes without me having to change each one of those. But what I think I find that this feature being more useful is when, using it with imports and custom model imports as well. Okay, let's see. That is great. Make switching out gray box and final art so easy. Yep, that's precisely the purpose of that. Oh yeah, thank you, Jonathan. That's why I forgot to do that, this part here. So edit templates, this one, then the color, and then the strength. I always forget that. There you go. Thank you so much. And then we can also save that. Save that. And then you can propagate those changes as well. Yeah, thank you, Craig. Yeah, I missed that. Scott is saying, can we export a meta asset to Blender to make changes that import it back again? Absolutely, yeah. You can, well, let me take that back. When you export something from Horizon, what you export is the mesh information. So let me demonstrate that real quick. So if I go here, they changed the location of this. Now it's in here, public library. I'm just gonna get something random. Maybe these hacks here, just for, because it's simple. So let's say if I go here, and then I want to export this, I go to, have it selected, yep, I go to here, then I go to export geometry. I want to select only the selected elements, and I'm gonna save it in my working folder, which is this one. I'm gonna create a new folder here, export, and select, and I'll give it a name, asset for now. Save it. Okay, it's done. Then I can go back here in Blender, import FBX, and then I go to my folder, export, which is this one. And then it's somewhere in here in the world. Let me find it. There you go. Here it is. And then let's say that I want to modify this, edit mode, and then I just want to maybe, I don't know, make this larger, I guess. So let's see, I'm gonna grab this, scale on the Z-axis, and then something like that, something ridiculous like that. Okay, so if I save it or export it, and then I click on File, Export, FBX, and then I'm gonna call this one Output for now, Workshop, Export, and then I try to import it in here. going to be texture, output. And if I try to import it, and we'll bring it over. This is what happens. So the problem is that when we export the data from Horizon, we don't export the texture information. Therefore, when you try to make changes to it, then you don't have that texture information, but you can export the geometry and then use your own textures and then start, changing the colors, as you wish. But you can, of course, make changes to the geometry and modify it that way. Quick note there, sometimes if you use like the primitives, from the legacy primitives, and then you export those and then you re-import that into Horizon, sometimes they do keep the color, the original color that they had, as long as you re-import that information as is. Okay, cool. All right, so let's see how we're doing on time. Okay, we have 20 more minutes. Let me jump into something that I think is also important, and it's basically what I mentioned on the earlier today, my preferred way of or workflow whenever I'm creating custom UIs. So I want to say that 80% of a successful custom UI is the planning phase. And what do I mean by that? If for some of you that have worked with custom UIs in the past, you know how difficult it is to just use code to design and script the custom UIs at the same time. And what do I mean by that? Let me just quickly demonstrate here. I'm just gonna create a new script and let's call it new CUI for now. And then if I go back to my code, it's right here. Then let's say that I want to start, scripting my custom UI from here. So the first thing that we normally do is that we do the import from the custom UI API. I already have it enabled. So it's going to be from Horizon UI. And then I have to change my component to be a custom UI. So there's going to be UI components. And this one, you don't have to change this one, but I like to change it just to keep it, the same way. And then we have to, initialize the custom UI. So it's going to be initialize UI. And then we can start, designing things here. We can say something like return and then view. And then let's say that I'm going to start with something simple like a background. So it's going to be just an empty children. Style. And then I'm just going to say width, it's going to see 100%. And the height, it's going to be 100%. And the background color is going to be, say maybe blue for now. And let me import this view like so. Width. There you go. And then if I save it, and then I go back to my desktop editor, I bring the gizmo, custom UI, and then I attach that script. New CUI, play my simulation, and there you have it. And let's say, for example, that I want to add buttons and, the areas in the center. Now I have to guess it, start thinking, okay, so now I want to add a cube at the center of the custom UI. I'm just gonna, for the sake of time, I'm just gonna copy this portion and I'm just gonna make it that is going to be maybe 20% of the custom UI. So I'm gonna say that this is gonna be 2020 and this is gonna be white here for now. And then if I save it, then let's see what we get. And then we have the cube. But then if I want to move it now to the right, then I have to go back to the script, make changes, see what happens and see, it's kind of like a lengthy process. So normally what I like to do is that I use an application, any application. Let me see where I have it. I use things like either Illustrator or any other application that shows or that I can use then to plan the custom UI ahead of time with the corresponding measurements, and then I translate that information into scripts. Let's see how it looks. In this case, I'm going to be using Figma actually, and I'm going to go through all the steps so you can see from the moment of starting a new account all the way through getting something that you can use from here. So let me just go ahead and log in real quick. See, I'm going to select a different account here. This one. Continue. 1 second. Okay, so I'm just logged in with a brand new account here. So it's going to tell me, hey, what name do I want to use? I'm going to say, in this case, Pigeon number 12. Figma is an application that you can use to collaborate with your team whenever you want to design like different things. Like, it's commonly used for designers to design, to create UIs like this. So I'm just going to use configure some random information in this case. I'm just going to say that this one is for software development for now. It's going to be, I'm a freelancer. This is just me. I will not be inviting anybody right now. Other for now. How have you used Figma products? I'm going to say no. Again, just simulating the very first scenario. And I'm just going to use the free version of it. If you use the paid version, it's really good because actually Figma can give you like something that you can potentially copy paste into Horizon, but it's not exactly the same thing. But you still have to change it, but you can still use the free version. So in this case, it's going to be the starter. It's for free. And then I'm just going to design in Figma. So I'm going to press finish. So after I'm here, so this is kind of like the default configuration. So in here, I can start, for example, let's say designing my custom UI. In this case, I can say that this is going to be, 800 by 600 custom UI. So I'm going to say here that it's going to be 800 width and 600 height. I'm going to say that this one is going to be a grayish background, like say something like that. And then I'm going to place objects inside of it. For example, let's say like here. Again, I'm going to modify this one to be maybe 500 by 500. And then I can start, making changes as I would. It's basically having like a visual representation of what you're going to be expecting to see in Horizon Worlds. So in this case, I'm just going to have maybe like a image display at the center. And then we can also make changes to the border, for example. I can say that this one is going to be a little bit rounded. So I can just change these attributes here. As you can see, for example, it's now being a little bit rounded. And maybe I'm going to add some shadows around it. So now I can say here, let's say the strokes. I can increase the width like this. But then maybe to simulate the shadow portion, I can just do, instead of all of those, I can just do only the left and right, for example. So I'm going to remove the left and the bottom. So I'm going to remove the top and right like that. So now that I have, let's say, again, this is something very simple. And maybe for the background also, I can increase the radius of the borders like this. So now that I have it planned like this, it's going to be very easy for me now to translate into something that I can use in Horizon Worlds. For example, like this one, starting from the background, I know that the width is 800 and the height is 600. So now I can go here and then go ahead and make those changes. So in this case, it's going to be the width is 800 and the height is going to be 600. The next thing that I know is that this one has a particular color for the background. So I can just copy this color from here, which is the hex color. There you go. Double click copy. And then now I can go back to Horizon Worlds and make changes to it. So this one, instead of being blue, the background, I can just paste it with the number sign in front of it. Save it. And boom, if I go back to Horizon Worlds, I should be able to start seeing those changes. There you go, it's getting closer. So now I'll go back to Figma. I know, for example, that there is a square at the center. So now I can get from here what is the width and the height, go back to Horizon Worlds. I already have one cube. This one is going to be 500 by 500. This is a number, so it shouldn't be a text. And then the color of this one is going to be this one right here. So I can also copy it and paste it here. Let's continue with the next part. For example, this one has a border radius. So I know that the border radius on this one is, see, 59. I like random numbers. I'm just going to make it 60. Okay, so now if I go back here, I can say border radius, and this one is going to be 60. So let's see how this looks so far. So if I go back to Horizon, there you go. It's looking really, really nice. So now I want to center all of that. I can just do, just define content center, align item center, and align content center as well. So that ways everything is nice and tidy. But you see my point. The part here is the key component is do not plan custom UIs. Do not, start using code and then switch back and forth between the code. And then what you see here to then decide how the layout should look like. My advice here is to plan ahead and then implement after you have, the final decision of how things should look like. You can then use that information to then, script your custom UI. It's a really short path if you follow that workflow. And I'm just gonna finish here with the format of the border information. So I can now say, hey, this is gonna have a border color. In this case, it's just black. And then this one also has a border width. This is gonna be only on the left and bottom. So it's gonna be left, border left width. And let me see what I used in Figma is 12. So I'm gonna put 12 in here, and then border button width is gonna be 12 as well. So now if I save this and go back to Horizon, there you have it. So no back, not like guessing, to see if this is gonna look good or not. I just plan ahead, and then I use that information to plan to a script. All the information that you need for your script, again, if you use an application like this one, is gonna be already configured for you, or it's gonna be visually available for you, so you can copy that information and use it in Horizon Worlds. Okay, I think that was a lot, but I think it was necessary to be able to cover things. Let's see what we have here. So reading through the questions and comments. Figma, yeah, you can use Figma. The 3P of success, exactly. 3P of success, plan, exactly. I haven't heard a napkin sketch, Ash. That's actually really good to know. I haven't used that so far, so I'm gonna give it a try for sure. Oh, thank you. Yeah, early order. Yeah, this is definitely the way to go. Let's see. With the time that I have left, the part that I want to mention is the use of variable groups, because I have seen many comments recently on different channels about variable groups not working as expected. And basically what I want to more than anything is basically share some tips and guidance on what normally works for me to avoid those scenarios or those situations. So what I have here right now configured is a simple, a scenario where if I enter these trigger here. Oh, by the way, you see my avatar not moving? That's because I used the switch to VR option. So let me just leave and come back into a world. Because I don't like it to see it so stiff like that. Okay, great. So hopefully my avatar is going to be able to move now. So if I go here, it's a simple setup that basically counts how many visits I have and how many times I jump into this pad here. So I had 7 initially. Now I should have a little bit more. Okay, and there you have it. So actually, for this capture of variable persistent data, I'm using both methods, both an object and a number. So if I go to my system menu, and then I go to variable groups, I have my variable group right now, which is just demo group. And if I go here, as you can see here, I have an object, PPV, which is the one that is capturing the visits. And then I have a jumps persistent variable, which is just a number. And that's the one that is captured every time that I jump here. So my advice, well, first of all, for those of you that haven't used objects variables, basically this is kind of like the, one of the best things that Horizon has created, because instead of just storing numbers, you can actually store like multi-dimensional information about a player. So if I go to the script for this part here, variable groups, it looks something like this. So in this case, I have kind of like a template with the information that I want to store in that variable group, which is what I have here, player stats. And then I basically retrieve this. Let me actually increase the size of this. So I can actually retrieve this information, getting the persistent storage API. And then if this is the first time that the player is entering the world, I have a variable that defines the default values, in this case, visit 1. But then as the player returns to the world, then I just use that information and then I modify the values as needed. In this case, I only have one variable on the player stats, but for example, you can have things like a number of purchases, for example, purchases, and there's going to be a number as well. You can have something like last time player visits, and there's going to be a number. Dates are stored as number. I prefer to use numbers because it's easier to conduct mathematical operations with those. And then I can have, like default values here. And then as you can see, basically what this does is that now whenever I get that player persistent variable, which is an object, instead of retrieving a single value, I can now get a list of attributes that belong to the same player stats information for that player. When this was released, what I have noticed among creators is that now this feature is being used extensively without any type of like precautions. But the thing is that since this is JSON data, the speed on how you can retrieve and set this information is slower than setting and getting the number information that we're used to, prior this feature. So my recommendation when using like object data like this is that you use it for information that will not be changing very infrequently. Like I wouldn't use this type of player persistent variable to store things like, like player hits. Hits, for example, is going to be hits, if I can know how to spell. I wouldn't use it for something like that because most likely if you're creating a player PPV game, the players are going to be hitting each other, shooting each other very frequently. If you were to then use this player persistent variable to store that information, that means that every time that you save this PPV, you are not only saving this variable, you are always sending all this information at the same time to the server, and that is really low performance. So for things that that you're going to be changing a lot, I highly recommend to still using number variables instead of using the objects variables. Again, objects variables are great whenever you want to package information about a player, but you know that the frequency of making changes to those variables is not very high. Another use case for this one is whenever you want to save, let's say, things that you cannot store with numbers, for example. Let's say that you want to save in here the last weapon skin, for example. And this is probably a conversation for another time, but you can actually reference assets by their ID. So if I click, for example, in the asset that I created earlier, which is this one, I can copy this ID, for example, and then I can reference that ID in the player stats. And then I know, for example, what was the last weapon that that player used if I wanted to. So in this case, it's going to be a number or a string, and then I can reference that number. That is another excellent example for the use of object data in player persistent variables. But again, if we're going to be using persistent data to set and retrieve value very frequently, I highly recommend to still use the numbers instead of using object data, because that's going to be super slow with network latency. Any questions here? It's just me. Okay. It's just me doling it out in paper. Okay, I see. Yeah, I've used Meter as well in the past. So that's a good call out. Yeah, same, Cray. I don't like when my avatar is kind of like a stiff like that. Yeah, exactly. So Natasha, yeah, you can store literally any type of data. This information that you're storing in player persistent variables, you know, as an object, is literally just JSON data. So anything that you can store, you know, as JSON data or information, you can also, you know, save it in the player persistent variable as an object. But again, do not over abuse the type of the amount of information that you save there. If you notice that you have a lot of variables, I think that the best approach there would be to create categories of data. For example, you can have, let's say, like a store data. You can have another one like, you know, player visits data. You can have another one that is like economy data or something like that, right? And then you create one object for each one of those in a way that whenever you have to make changes to one category of information, you don't have to affect anything else.